97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with 97.3 ESPN.com's Andrew DiCecco. Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
You know, we recognize the ability of the roster that's put together right now. And I think we have the ability to do something really special with this group, but it's going to take a lot of hard work.
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
It is Football at 4. It's powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now. They'll match your first deposit up to $250. Go to PlaySugarHouse.com and win real money with their sports book with casino games from the comfort of your home. Must be 21 in order to play. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Andrew DiCecco is here. Eagle win. And they get it from a lot of unfamiliar faces. Let's get Andrew DiCecco's take on the game last night. Some observations from him and more right now from 97.3 ESPN.com. Andrew, what's up, man?
Hey, doing well, Mike. How are you?
All is well, and it feels a lot better when the Eagles win. There's a lot different vibe around this game, obviously. Let me ask you, what did you think was a key game plan or change that the Eagles made that allowed them to steal one on the road?
I thought they were a little bit more aggressive on defense, getting after Nick Mullins, who obviously struggled mightily. You didn't see the same Nick Mullins that you saw against the New York Giants the week before that. They got a lot of pressure from their interior, and they used Jernard Avery as a stand-up rusher. I thought that was a phenomenal game plan by Jim Schwartz to really attack an unproven quarterback. I thought that you saw that the pressure really – he forced some throws in there, and he didn't look comfortable for the entirety of the game, and that's why you saw C.J. Beathard come in late in the game. So I thought that the defense really stepped up. Obviously, they got a turnover as well because of some of the pressure. So I thought that was a nice adjustment.
Obviously, yeah, you mentioned that defensive side of the ball. I thought the defensive line played maybe their best game of the year. They got some pressure there. Their linebackers, always a problem. Singleton, I thought, made the big play. Actually had a couple of tackles. I liked what I saw from him in the short amount of time, and the secondary just average. I guess the question would be, did the defensive line show you enough the last 2 weeks to suggest that they are, kind of going to be the strength of this team and that they can be counted on?
Yeah, I believe that as guys start to get in a rhythm and Javon Hargrave starts to get in his rhythm and you get Vinny Curry back in the next couple of weeks or so, guys are starting to really start to hit their stride right now. And you're starting to see – because, there hasn't been an off season. Obviously, there's no preseason games to really get that to get used to playing with one another and alongside one another. And I think you're starting to see them gel at the right time, and they're going to start to get some guys healthy. And obviously, there's a strong nucleus along the defensive tackle position, and that is where your pressure really needs to be generated from. They've allocated a lot of resources into that defensive tackle position, and they really came to play last night. Even Hassan Ridgeway got in on a sack, and I think that moving forward here, that's going to be a strength, and that's going to take a little bit of pressure off the secondary.
But do you think it's enough pressure? Because when you look at that secondary and you specifically look at the linebackers who continue to just get crushed by tight ends, do you think that they have enough in the tank to make up for that against, let's say, better teams? Although, Kittle might be the best that you see, but overall, do you think that they can get enough pressure to maybe allow, I don't know. I mean, the linebackers are just that bad. It's hard to justify anyone helping them out.
Well, Hunter, I think that they have enough there on the defensive line to get them out of most jams. Not against some of the stronger teams like next week, like you're going to see with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens the week after that. It's not going to get them out of those type of pickles, but against a depleted 49ers team, yeah. I mean, even with George Kittle playing out of his mind like he did yesterday, I believe he had 15 catches. The pressure really rattled Nick Mullins, but they're not going to face Nick Mullins every week. So the secondary is going to have to step up, and they're going to have to find something there at linebacker. Obviously, Alex Singleton came in and stepped in and played nicely. What you find with a lot of these guys that come in off the bench, or they're just waiting for an opportunity, and a lot of times when you see them step in, they're hungrier. They want to stay on the field. They want to carve out a role in whatever unit it is, whether it be offense or defense. And those guys, they come to play. And you saw that with Alex Singleton last night, making the most out of it. He came into the game with 11 snaps total of playing defense. So you got to really see him assert himself in the defense. And I think he's going to be a piece moving forward, whether or not it has to do with TJ Edwards or not. His injury, but I mean, Singleton played before that. He was in on defense before the injury. So I think they're trying to find a perfect match of linebackers to see what works.
What is give us a little background on Singleton. I thought, once he came in, made a couple nice tackles, and obviously the pick, 6'2", he's a bigger guy than I thought he appeared on television last night. On TV, he looks like a very undersized guy, but tell us a little bit more about him.
Well, he was a Canadian Football League standout. He was a tackling machine in the CFL. Had an opportunity in the NFL early before that. Didn't really quite work out for him, and he really made the team last year based on his special teams performance. And that's pretty much what he did. He was a core special teams member last season. Really, you got to see him thrive in the preseason, but he wasn't really a factor on defense at all last season, and he only played 11 snaps this season. But he's one of those guys that he's an effort guy. He's an instinctive guy. He plays with a lot of tenacity. If you remember a guy named Brian Brayman, he kind of reminds me a little bit of that type of crazy, get after it, tenacious type of player. And that's what that defense really needs. There's not a lot of those guys that are going to fly around and get guys going. You don't, especially from the linebacker position. So to see him make some plays out there, you kind of saw his energy radiate throughout the entire defense.
Now, I don't know the current update on TJ Edwards, but what did you think about his game before he went out? Because he was pretty noticeable with some tough tackles as well.
Yeah, particularly the one I saw him closing in on Jerick McKinnon on the sideline. That was one of the harder hits I can remember seeing. Just a perfect form tackle, ran through Jerick McKinnon. I thought TJ Edwards he's probably their best linebacker, and obviously that's not saying a whole lot, but from a fundamental standpoint, he's just a solid tackler. He finds the football. He's a strong run defender. He's developing his skills as pass coverage. But so obviously missing him and Rudy Ford as well. And the next guy, obviously Doug Peterson today said they're going to miss a little bit of time. So Alex Singleton, seeing that performance from him yesterday is a little bit encouraging. And I'd also like to think that they're going to give Sean Bradley, the rookie, some opportunities here as well, because there's not a whole lot of option that they have, but he's an experienced, he's played a lot of football at Temple. He's a fundamentally sound player. He's the guy that you would want to turn to over, let's say, a Davion Taylor in this situation.
We're talking with Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4 here, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Who is Travis Fulgum?
I got a lot of questions about Travis Fulgum over the last, 12 hours or so. He's an interesting player, man. He had no Division I offers coming out of high school. He was a walk-on player at Old Dominion. That only lasted a week before he was put on scholarship. Didn't do a whole lot his first few seasons there. Had 1,083 yards as a redshirt senior. Did enough there to earn an opportunity to play in the Reese's Senior Bowl, where he got a lot of eyes on him. Became a 6th-round pick of the Detroit Lions in 2019. Didn't stick there. Played 3 games and roughly 63 snaps, I believe. Didn't record any receptions or anything like that. And bounced around between the Lions, the Packers, over in August alone before the Eagles snagged him. So he was kind of discarded. Nobody really wanted Travis Fulgham. The Eagles saw enough in him to take a chance on him off waivers. Made some plays in training camp in his limited opportunities, which is impressive because he did end up sticking on the practice squad. So you got to figure he had 2 weeks to make an impression and did enough to do so. And then he obviously got an opportunity to play in prime time and made a tremendous catch to stay in bounds. That body control was phenomenal, and that rapport with Carson Wentz. They only repped that play once in practice. So now Carson Wentz said they're 2 for 2 now. So it's just good to see these young players take advantage of their opportunities.
What did you think about that throw by Carson? Because, he's been criticized a lot. He missed some other throws throughout the game, whether it was Miles Sanders on 2nd and 9 that was a little low, and over the middle he missed one as well. And that throw was just so beautiful, and he's been so heavily criticized. And I think in a big moment, in a big game, he needed to come up with a big-time throw, and he absolutely executed it.
Yeah, he certainly did. That was a big-time throw. And say what you will about Carson and his ball placement and accuracy in certain spots, but that's kind of what you get with Carson Wentz. It's the ebbs and flows of his game. You're going to see peaks and valleys. There's certain games that he's on, and there's a lot of games where he's sailing balls on guys, and his mechanics are off. You saw that in the early stages of this game. But like you said, when it really mattered, he fired. He threaded the needle there, and and he put the ball out there, which is what you and I talked about last week. Put the ball out there, take care of everything on your end, and let your guys run under it and make a play. And if they, should it be if they drop it or whatever, that's on them. But at least give them a chance. And John Hightower was a classic example of somebody who got open a lot against the Cincinnati Bengals, but Carson Wentz, for whatever reason, didn't pull the trigger. And this week he did.
Yeah, and I know that, look, they're very undermanned at wide receiver again. I want to get your opinion on this. Do you think it sets a good message if you walk in and say, look, you know what, we're going to release J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. You know what, he's not performing. We got other guys here. Is that an impactful message, or is that not worth doing?
I think that would make a tremendous statement. It's like you're seeing all these young players that are outproducing him. They're coming in with barely any rapport with their quarterback, coming in there making tough catches, making big plays. Travis Fulgham now has one touchdown. Well, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside has one touchdown as well, and 0 catches, by the way. Just to give a guy a roster spot because of draft pedigree, that kind of sends a mixed message, because now we're 19 games into JJ's career and he hasn't really done anything. But you're seeing these guys, even a Rob Davis last season, Deontay Burnett last season, and guys this year, Greg Ward. I mean, these guys are playing with heart. They want to go out there and they want to carve out a role in the NFL. And you're seeing how hungry these guys are. You don't see that same hunger and sense of urgency from a guy like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. So I think just to keep him on the roster because of draft pedigree alone, that's not the message you want to convey.
I'm not discrediting that. I do think that there's value in making a statement, but I honestly feel cutting him, I mean, I know the decision would be made by the front office, but it's almost a statement to the front office that the guys you're drafting are just flat out not good enough, and the guys that are on the practice squad are outperforming
That's
them.
not a reason to keep a guy, though.
I know.
Right.
I want these
not.
guys, like, we blame these guys for getting it wrong. Step up and say I got it wrong.
You're right. I wish they did that. They just don't.
And someone needs to be accountable for that. So I think sending a message like that, say, hey, you know what? This is a guy that you invested a second-round draft pick in. We're cutting him. So you can't make that same mistake again.
I want to get your thoughts on Doug Peterson yesterday with his game plan. So I thought that there was a lot more creativity. Getting Carson out of the pocket was definitely big. A couple questionable things, though. I know the two-point conversion, it worked, so it looks genius. There was one point where 17 offensive plays happened where Miles Sanders did not get the ball, and then late in the game, very conservative, and the package was Boston Scott and Corey Clement. So overall, what did you think about Doug Peterson's game, and then specifically, the usage of, or the lack thereof, of Miles Sanders late?
Well, you like to see aggressive Doug. You saw him go for the two-point conversion, obviously, in the beginning of the game. That's the aggressive Doug that we've grown accustomed to seeing. Of course, what goes with that is some puzzling moves throughout the game, and you saw that in the end of the game where the questionable usage of the running backs in particular. Miles Sanders they kept him bottled up. I believe his longest run was 9 yards, but he was moving he was giving some positive runs and moving the chains to get away from your preacher running back to give it to a guy like Corey Clement, who really hasn't done a whole lot in the past couple of seasons, let alone the last couple of games. I thought that was really questionable considering Miles, from what we've heard, hasn't suffered an injury. He was going through a little bit of fatigue last week, but today he was asked about it, Doug Peterson was, and he said that Miles is okay. So I thought that kind of usage was a little bit odd. They dressed 5 running backs yesterday, and Jason Huntley didn't even play. Obviously, they had to do that because they were shorter on offensive resources. But that was one thing that really stuck out to me as well. Yeah,
I saw. In fact, you tweeted that out that they were going with 5 wide receivers, and I guess they're a little shorthanded. When everybody is back and healthy, do you think guys like Fulgham, Hightower, those guys have a role? I mean, Deshaun Jackson's going to be back, we would imagine. Alshon Jeffrey's going to be back, we would imagine. Jalen Reagor, maybe a little bit longer down the road, but he should be back. Those three guys are playing. Ward's going to play.
Yeah.
That's four guys there. How much time is left over?
And let's not forget Quez Watkins. I mean, a little bit ago, Adrian Killens was waived. To me, that signaled that another offensive weapon is returning from injury, and I think that would be probably Quez Watkins or maybe even Alshon Jeffrey this week, and they don't really need to go with 5 running backs on the active roster. Killens was brought up for this game for his speed because they lacked a lot of explosive players against a 49ers team that he really had a thin margin for error. There really wasn't a need for him on the roster past this week. But to answer your question, Mike, I don't know where a lot of these guys are going to fit when you get these guys healthy. You wait all year for an Alshon Jeffrey and you have so much invested in Jalen Reagor. There's not a lot of spots for these guys, and I think a guy like Travis Fulgham will probably revert back to the practice squad unless they opt to keep six wide receivers.
A weapon we haven't talked about yet is Zach Ertz, and there's 3 ways to kind of look at what Zach Ertz was yesterday and throughout this entire season to this point. And is he upset with the front office and everything going with the contract that is hurting him on the field? Is it teams are covering him so hard and saying, you better beat us in other ways? Or is it 3, he's just getting a little bit older and that's what happens when father time catches up to you? Or I guess you can combine all 3. How do you think it goes down?
Well, one thing I noticed, Hunter, and you can agree or disagree, is you got to really see the disparity between George Kittle and Zach Ertz. Both are great players, but George Kittle is someone that's going to take teams down the field. He's going to run after the catch, and it takes a lot of guys. It takes almost a village to bring him down. He just commands the football, and he's just a physical presence out there. You don't get the same type of game from Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz is a better route runner than George Kittle, but he's not nearly as athletic or as dynamic of a player as George is. And I think honestly, what's going on with him is I think Father Time it's a combination of like what you said. It's the contract. It's Father Time catching up to him. It's just the way the teams are defending him. He's really been their only weapon, and he's getting a lot of different looks now that he's not maybe accustomed to seeing. And I think, he's really now more or less become something of a decoy, and they're making these other guys beat them. And that's really the way the teams are going to approach that. As long as the Eagles have a depleted wide receiving core, they're going to say, okay, well, let's make one of these guys beat us and take away their best weapon in Zach Ertz.
Yeah, he had it's almost unfathomable. He had 4 catches for 8 yards yesterday, or 9 yards yesterday, and one of them was an 8-yard catch. They got to figure out ways to kind of get him more involved. I want to, talk about the fact that they win this game on the road against a good team. Yeah, they're banged up. They are. San Francisco is banged up. But for them to get this win on the road, what does it say about this team? Should we be looking at this team differently now?
Well, I think that this was a spot in the season where it could have spiraled out of control had they lost this game. And what you really wanted to see, and the identity of these Doug Peterson teams is everybody they fight. There's no quit in any of the teams that he's had since he's taken over as the Eagles head coach. And that's really what you saw last night. When their backs are against the wall, they banded together. They made the necessary plays they needed to make. The leaders stepped up and made their plays. You look at the Rodney McLeod interception and things like that. It's a veteran team that knows what they have to do to win. And I feel like there's always been that us against the world mentality with Doug's teams, especially when they get off to they go through these rough patches. And it's very encouraging to see that they could dig down and make the necessary plays to pull out a win in prime time. So it's definitely encouraging to see. Obviously, the next couple of weeks are going to be very telling as where they are as a football team. But yeah, I mean, that was very, very encouraging to see.
What do you think of Jordan Mailata? Everyone brings up the false start. That was definitely a factor, and it hurt the football team. But other than that, and other than maybe one rush, I thought he did pretty damn well.
I thought he did outstanding, all things considered. When you're talking about a guy who was selected in the 2018 draft as a late-round flyer based on purely on athleticism, to have a guy who never played football prior to the 2018 preseason, never played American football, and then 2 years later you're starting in prime time and you're holding your own against a veteran edge rusher in Kerry Hyder. I thought he did a great job outside of that false start. he is so gifted that once his athleticism catches up with the technical aspect of the position, he has all-pro potential. That's how good he can be.
Let me ask you this. If he plays well, I know Adam said this during the pregame show yesterday on Inside the Birds. If he plays well the next 3 games, he suggests to just stick with him. Do you then not play Peters if Peters is ready to come back, or do you shift him back to right guard?
Well, that's sort of a good problem to have. Now, I agree with what Adam says. If you see another good performance out of Jordan Mailata, or even another 2 good performances out of him, I think you leave him at left tackle, let him grow into that role, which you really drafted him to, in the hopes that he would sort of ascend in that role, as far as a tackle that could at least a swing tackle. I think you go with Jordan Mailata at left tackle, and I think maybe you consider moving Jason Peters at right guard, because as the line stands right now, if you had to pick a weak link, it'd probably be Matt Pryor.
Yeah, the right guard spot by Pryor, yeah. And I know Peters, he struggled at left tackle, obviously, for the first couple of games, but he did come into camp in more guard shape, and maybe, he's struggling to get into tackle shape. Who knows? But if you could get him playing guard, him and Lane Johnson over there, if Mailata. Now, the interesting part would be, what's the future for Andre Dillard if that's the case? I mean, that's another interesting conundrum that would end up coming up here, but that's down the road. Let me ask you this. On the defensive side of the ball, Avery, Barnett, I thought those 2 guys really stepped out. Does Avery have a bigger role going forward, or is this the right role for him, what we saw last night?
That's the ideal role that you're going to see from a Gennard Avery. He's not the biggest guy. He's about 6 foot. He's a squatty type of guy. I believe he's 250 pounds, right around that range. You want to use him like they used him last night as a stand-up rusher. You don't want to wear him down. You want him to come in fresh and have that energy and that burst off the edge like you saw last night. And ideally, you want to see him in that. He played 16 snaps last night. You would like to see him between that 12 to 16 and maybe even 18 snap range, and keep him fresh and attacking the quarterback. But you definitely got some return on their investment finally on Gennard Avery. So that was definitely something that was great to see if you're the Eagles.
Yeah, that was a 4th-round pick they gave up for Avery, and haven't got a lot of snaps out of him. I thought Barnett played maybe his best game as an Eagle last night. Yeah,
he definitely he seemed to have. You see someone like Josh Sweat playing over him and seeing all this success, and something just seemed to click with him. He got into a rhythm last night, and he seemed virtually unblockable. That's the Derek Barnett that we've all been waiting to see for the past couple of seasons. Now it's all about consistency, stacking the good games and becoming the player that they drafted him to be in the 2017 draft.
All right, Andrew DiCecco with more on this at 97.3 ESPN.com, DiCecco NFL, and of course the Eagles now getting ready for Pittsburgh in an interesting week, because the Steelers had an unexpected bye this week, so we'll start to dive into that and a lot more. Jim Schwartz will talk tomorrow. We'll see what he has to say. Andrew will be back, and of course Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Jeff Mosher Wednesday, Adam Kaplan Thursday, and Mosher's back on Friday. Andrew, we'll talk to you tomorrow, pal.
Absolutely, guys. Have a great day.
All right. He, like all guests, appeared to be the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. And Football at 4 is brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now. They'll match your first deposit up to $250. Go to PlaySugarHouse.com and win real money with their sports books, along with casinos games from the comfort of your home.